All right. I believe we're recording. Does it say we're recording?
Recording.
Oh, yes, it does.
Awesome. Well, welcome everyone, and welcome. My guests today are Steve and Bailey from ATF, Attack the Fire, a punk rock band from Vancouver, Canada, Vancouver, BC, Canada. I almost said California.
Yeah.
You guys played down there a lot. Hey? But anyways, Steve, Bailey, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having us.
No problem.
Which one is Steve and which one's Bailey? You guys can introduce
I'm
yourself.
Bailey.
I'm Steve.
And Bailey, you're the singer of ATF, is that correct?
Yes.
Right on. Well, let's start first by kind of introducing how we came across each other and why I have you on today. I met you last year just after the lockdown, I guess, the lockdown, the prison term for us last year. And I hosted you and another couple on our boat for a couple of nights. And we really hit it off because I hadn't really come across many people that were awake to what's going on in our world right now. And so it was really refreshing. And so let's see, you guys were really informing me a lot about Trump, Donald J. Trump in the States. And we were trying to red pill our friends. They obviously
They missed that.
They missed the pill.
Yes, they missed it. Okay, so let's start with how you guys came across it. You guys knew in 2016 that you guys were predicting that Donald Trump would win. So let's just get into that because we do talk a lot about politics and how it's affecting our world today. You guys were way ahead of the curve on the knowledge. How did you guys come across that? Let's just start with that. Like the whole election, your guys' knowledge on how you guys came across the wave behind Trump and how he got elected and everything.
You could see it coming, really. The grassroots from the ground up. You could see it coming. People just didn't want to accept it.
But you guys weren't watching the mainstream media. How were you getting this?
Absolutely not.
No, but we live a life that, especially when we lived in Vancouver, we were surrounded by a lot of different people. We worked for lower income people, and we also worked for upper middle class people and upper class people. And there's a huge disconnect right now in socioeconomics, and we could see it coming up with Trump, like a lot of hope for the working class.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much where we started basing our predictions on.
Right on. And then so about the band, you guys are a punk rock band and you shared some lyrics with me, and I've listened to you guys. It comes a little bit heavy metalish. How would you guys really describe your music?
I would say crossover, hardcore.
Yeah, hardcore.
Punk metal crossover, yeah.
And then what was it like in Vancouver? Like as far as, you know, when I was growing up, I was listening to punk rock in the 80s in Southern California, and you know, it was anti-establishment and anti-government, and it's kind of funny because it almost seems liberal, but it's at the same time it's truth, anti-establishment, that counterculture. You guys seem to be growing up in that, maybe a generation slightly behind me. But in Vancouver, how were you being treated as kind of vocal on the political side of things?
Well, the whole thing is flipped. The liberals are now the establishment, and conservatives are now punk rock.
Okay.
That's how it is.
Whereas about maybe 40 years ago, you had the more liberal-minded people speaking out and being in the punk rock bands and kind of being counterculture, whereas the conservatives were kind of like trying to put some like, you know, those social disclaimers on the CDs and stuff about lyrics and stuff. That was all done by conservatives, essentially, and liberals were talking about it and going and doing it anyways. So it's weird how it flipped.
Yeah.
Well, for instance, DOA, the singer, what's his name? I can't remember his name. Keith. Anyway, he's NDP, so you don't need to say anything more than that.
Yeah.
So that
Democrat Party.
That is absolutely not punk rock.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's
so
all
he is now, or he was back then?
He is now. He has been forever.
Yeah.
Okay.
But so that's as
Joe Keithley. He's a politician in Burnaby, BC, Canada.
NDP.
Yeah, NDP.
NDP.
And so for anybody listening in the States or in Australia, our friends down there and stuff, that's the new Democratic Party, right?
yeah,
Right.
complete.
And have they ever
socialist-
held majority or anything like that in Canada?
No,
No, they've
No.
never.
they're a socialist.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
crap.
and we'll get more into the socialism side of Canada too, because we can see that happening right now. But and then I hear you guys put on a really good live show, and that's really where you guys excel. Bailey, you love to jump around, get in the crowd, and get into the mosh pit. But it sounds like you guys had a hard time, maybe with the other bands or booking gigs because of what was it, the offstage stuff and your beliefs, or was it the
Absolutely,
lyrics?
both sides of it. Yes, completely
And
We
so
got
what was
completely
happening?
ostracized out of the scene.
Yeah.
Ostracized because of your beliefs. And what were you kind of sharing? What was the differences, like how bad Obama was or something?
Yeah, that also. If you say anything about Trudeau, or if you say anything nice about Trump, you're immediately hated.
Isn't that crazy?
Anything about Trump.
Yep. And we
So-
actually had a bass player try out for our band when we were looking for a bass player. And it was around the time Trudeau was going to be elected into Canada, and he was going to legalize cannabis, Justin Trudeau. And this bass player said, "Oh, I've never voted in my life, but I'm going to go vote for Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party because they're going to legalize marijuana."
Yeah, anybody who legalizes marijuana
It's got my
has
vote.
got my vote.
Yeah.
And
So
like,
that's how uneducated all these people are.
fast forward 2 terms of Trudeau, and the legalization of cannabis has turned into a total disaster. And we like to refer to it as the illegalization of cannabis.
Absolutely.
And if you look at certain states in America, they're so much further ahead of us in what you're trying to accomplish with the legalization.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I could see that. The one reason why I moved, not one reason, but it was very nice that when I moved up here, it was a little bit more accessible. And I'll admit that I was pretty much chronic for probably close to 20 years. And down in California, it was really hard to come by. It was very expensive. And then when I moved up here, people were giving it to me. You could go into a shop and smoke it. And I always felt like it allowed me to kind of turn off that mainstream media, that programming, the indoctrination. Like I felt like when I smoked weed, it was actually liberating me from that in the box structure and mainstream media. And so I really enjoyed it. And once it became legal, I don't even like it anymore, to be honest. But I could see how people could easily fall into that trap of like, let's vote for him. And then what? They legalized it, but then it took a year and some bit to actually allow the shops to even sell it. And it seems like it's just about mass production and over packaging and stuff like that, hey?
It's just an extension of big pharma now. It's big pharma. It's a tax grab. There's all sorts of extra taxes added onto it. The consumer really does lose out. And medical patients, people who rely on cannabis for medical purposes, now cannot access it at a price that they can afford.
Yeah.
So they've really taken the access away. They've made a lot of stuff more illegal.
Well, with the legalization, they've actually opened it up worse than drunk driving charges.
Which including, they actually made the drunk driving charges more harsher in this country, because now if you're suspected of smoking cannabis before driving, and say your neighbor calls the cops on you, the police have the right to enter your home.
Enter your home now, illegal search and seizure now.
Within 2 hours of being reported for intoxication. And meanwhile, they don't even have the proper equipment to determine whether you're intoxicated on cannabis.
Right. So it almost sounds like they legalized it so that they could kind of breach some of your civil rights and liberties.
Correct.
By getting in.
That's the whole truth.
I noticed on your guys' home that you guys have the Charter of Rights and on a plaque. And so you guys look at that every day. I think that's pretty admirable. I think more people should be educating themselves on their rights, what's going on right now. So happy Valentine's, by the way. You guys are a couple. Today is February 14th, 2021. We are on Vancouver Island, a little town outside of Vancouver, but on the island, and we won't tell our location, but let's see. So you guys are ostracized as the band. You guys probably don't get to play music anymore. How's that making you feel? Is it driving you crazy that you can't get on stage and let out some of this angst?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gets pretty boring.
I have to
Yeah,
say,
I like to play loud, abrasive music and
Yeah.
yell at people and
Mhm.
play loud guitar. I do like
Yeah.
that.
and it's quite satisfying to give the crowd a little shock when you come in really mean it.
Yeah. And so you guys are a couple, right? You guys are in the same band. What was that like, coming across each other, having the same beliefs, the same music interests and stuff, and then being in a band together? What's that like?
It all came together
Mm.
actually. That's bonus.
That's the
It was,
easiest part.
it just works. So
Cool. Well, I appreciate you guys coming on together on this day. I know that Steve wants to gaze into your eyes and tell you all these romantic things today, and
yeah.
kind of just kiss and hug and cuddle all day. But
Yeah.
I forced you guys to go live with me and talk about the current situation. So yeah, thank you.
No problem.
So you got out of the big city and now you're in a little town. What's it like being in a little town during this universal lockdown? How's it going out there
Way
for you?
better.
I think it was better.
It was, yeah.
The city doesn't look like the place where I want to be right now.
Or it didn't even then when
Yeah,
we were
even
there.
then, yeah.
It's so bad. City.
Yeah.
They're if it keeps going the way it's going, everyone's going to be in mega cities anyway. So we better enjoy it now.
Yeah. So were you guys aware of the agendas that, these, I don't even like to call them elite, but that's what people say because they're not elitist to me. They're just, families with an interest. And I believe there's an agenda. And I think you guys must, like, were you aware of some of these things like Agenda 21 and Agenda 30 and stuff like that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Technocracy in particular. And do you see, does it seem like that's what's taking place right now?
Absolutely.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, look at Canada. I mean, we have censorship on all of our social media, even more than any other country. Like if that doesn't wake people up to what's happening, I don't even know what is worse than that. And if you do something online, like have a band or something, you really start to realize what is available to you. And the fact that we can't even post certain things in Canada, or we can't access certain things on a Google search that you can access in the States or any other country, it's pretty scary to me.
Yeah, it sounds like what China used to be like. We were all like, well, thank God we're not China. So well, but what's going on with Canada and its China ties? How, like, what's going? You must have seen.
It's been a while. Harper started that. He sold us out to keep us out of that. What was it? I remember a couple of years ago.
The forfeitures and the
remember in the States whenever on the homes were
the little depression that happened.
Little depression
in America.
So he sold us to China.
Okay.
After
to keep us out of that little depression.
What did he sell? Real estate, oil?
All of it. So basically back then, so this is going back maybe 20 years or maybe 15. Our government basically sold tons of shares. Almost 80% back then of our shares in oil production companies were owned by Chinese investors.
Wow.
Real estate.
Now our real estate is all owned.
It's crazy. It's crazy. There's this big, rich Asian person in Vancouver who owned a big building called the Bentall Building. It's where ICBC, which is our government car insurance agency is, and all the big banks are in this building. Well, this guy was a criminal and he loaned all this money from Chinese banks and bought a ton of real estate in Vancouver. Well, when China caught up with him and charged him with fraud, they seized all of his properties, including this huge building in Vancouver. So the Chinese government, even through seizure from criminals from their own country, they own parts of Canada just from that, not even including when they just come and buy in, and Chinese investors who are connected to the Communist Chinese Party are buying into our natural resources, logging and oil.
But that's okay,
and water.
Justin Trudeau, he admires China's basic dictatorship, so that's okay.
Yeah, he's come out and said that publicly.
Yeah, let's vote for him. He sounds like a good guy.
And so, and people, you don't think they're waking up to this right now? That they were sitting here. Nobody wants to be like the CCP, yet they don't see it happening right now? You're
Well,
tired
I think
now that
Mixed,
you got censorship and
yeah.
everything?
some days it just blows my mind that people think he's doing a good job, Trudeau.
Well,
Yeah.
there's contingency plans. Like the whole plan of our government has contingency plans. So where the working class starts feeling squeezed, they're like, oh, well, just go on social services. You're low income, you can get this kind of money. So people are like, okay, I can stay comfortable. And then the middle class people are like, well, I haven't started losing my stuff yet. So basically, despite what's going on and they can see it, it doesn't hurt yet.
Yeah.
And the unfortunate thing is it might be too late when it starts to hurt, but there's contingencies for each class of people just to keep you numb.
Hmm. Yeah, and so how is this too? We'll go back to the marijuana thing, because when it became legal just a few years ago, and then they did a lot of these lockdowns, and restaurants couldn't be open, but um, alcohol and the dispensaries were now what do you call? They were
Essential.
essentials. Isn't that kind of strange? Like
But-
first you were criminalized, you were a criminal if you smoked it, grew it, and now it's essential just because they signed into law. Isn't that kind of interesting?
Well, what I love about this double standard is that the mask policy, the argument is that if you don't wear a mask, you're putting others at risk. And then people say, yeah, and if you aren't taking precautions, you shouldn't be able to get our healthcare because we have a socialized healthcare system. So everybody's tax dollars pays for everybody's healthcare. So people say, well, if you're not going to take care, then you shouldn't have a right to the healthcare because you're not doing the COVID thing.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, people who smoke, drink alcohol, do all this stuff that's known bad for your health, that's okay though. But it's literally the same double standard that they're using. The same argument they're using pro mask is the same argument that they should be using for every other, consuming sugar, all of that stuff. It's terrible for your health.
Yeah, I agree. And when you say smoking, you're talking about cigarettes.
Cigarettes.
Cigarettes,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I mean, like, as much as I smoke cannabis and I love cannabis, if I was advising the younger generation, I would tell them to consume it because smoking
Yeah.
can't be that smoking chronically can't be that good for your health.
That's what I agree, and I think that was the thing. Is there's these the government's known for these oxymorons and stuff. So when they say that marijuana is a drug, when it really, in my opinion, should be called a medicine because people use it as medicinal.
Mhm.
But when they said, okay, well, it's a drug and it's going to harm you and it's a gateway and all this stuff. Well, when you finally try it, when you're, a teenager, you become exposed to it. It's like, hey, this isn't so bad. And, you can get by and stuff. It's like, well, if it's in the same level as cocaine and heroin and LSD and stuff like that, well, when they say that marijuana is bad and you try that, what do you think kids are going to do? It's like, well, they said marijuana is bad, but I can go to school on it. I feel mellow. I can play music on it. Doesn't that seem like it kind of opens the doors to say, well, no wonder they call it a gateway drug, because you'd be like, well, no, I'm going to try Coke. I'm going to try LSD. I'm going to try something else, because I feel like that stuff is not medicinal. That's, chemicals and crazy
Our
stuff.
education, everything we're fed is based on these little lies, these little white lies. And eventually that's why there's people like us, because eventually the little white lies add up and we just don't buy it anymore.
Right.
I was just reading an article before we did this about the white lie of Santa Claus. It's like parents are trained to lie to their kids and you're training them to tell these white lies. And what does that breed later on? Like when our daughter found out Santa Claus wasn't real, she was really mad at us. She felt betrayed.
Yeah.
And then it made me think, like, why did you have to, propagate that lie anyways? Like, I don't understand. And it's just part of all the lies we tell our children so they can accept all these lies as you grow up.
So we're being taught how to accept lies. And do you think, because that's what my lesson was, like, if the media has lied to me once,
yes,
shame on them. If they lie to me again and I believe it, then shame on me. How many lies does it take for people to wake up and see that, one, politicians have been lying to you, the media is lying to you, they have been, but yet they still accept it as truth, in fact, because it's on TV.
That's what's so frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
That's the most frustrating part.
How
people just blinders on, just onto their slave job and pay the bills, and that's it.
What about
It's
how many people
very
the
frustrating.
government's hurt or killed?
Right.
And yet we still take now these new COVID restrictions as gospel, like, oh, we have to do it because the government said, why can't people just follow the
Well,
rules?
Yeah.
Like, that's how people act. And it's like,
Democide. Have you heard of that word? Democide, I think it's called.
right, like death by government.
Yeah, exactly. That is the biggest death of all things outside of natural death that exists in our world. You know, you got dictators killing people by the millions and millions, and yet they don't believe that it can happen today. Everybody thinks that all this stuff is just ancient and historic. Well, there was crazy stuff that this government was doing still only 20, 30 years ago to the First Nation people. And yet,
Still like that.
I know, and there's people are still buying into the fact that, oh no, they wouldn't do that. And it doesn't make sense to me.
I
that-
always like to point to the mental health industry because, you know, people look right now at the mental health, and you look 50 years ago and they were being really cruel, and even 100 years ago, even more cruel, they say, you
In
know,
the
physically
sanitarium.
cruel by like giving people lobotomies and testing electroshock therapy and all this stuff. And you look and like, oh, we've made so much advancements. Oh, really? You think chemically torturing people on these pharmaceuticals is any better than what they were doing before by physically cutting into their head? Like they're literally making many conditions worse and just over prescribing. And the way they prescribe psychiatric meds isn't like, oh,
Well, every
you have
person's
this, this, and
diagnosed
this wrong. Yeah.
every day. Every child is ADD.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
And it's trial and error. They're like, oh, try this medication. Then, oh, that didn't work. Try this as well as that. And
it's
it's
just another money ball.
piling them on.
Pharmaceutical money ball.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you guys actually sing some songs about the big pharma too, right?
Yeah, that's a big
Correct.
deal to us.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's another thing is like people should wake up to the fact that there's a lot of money to be made in big pharma. I think at one time it was the biggest industry in North America. Now I think it's overtaken by human trafficking, which I think would be another discussion at another point, but it's becoming more and more obvious. It's really coming out into the open.
Yeah.
That is the world's biggest industry right now, human trafficking. But the pharmaceutical industry, another thing, we can talk about that because right now we have the vaccines coming out and people are going to make a lot of money off of it. Like if they want 7 billion people vaccinated, not just once or twice, that's a lot of money, right? But yet no trials, no clinical trials and stuff. So what's going on right now with that, you know?
I think that's absurd. I think anyone who's willing to take a medication that hasn't had a proper clinical trial, they must be mentally ill.
Oh, sign me up. Give me the job.
It makes no sense. It makes
sense. People are like, hey, we got to believe in the science. Oh, you don't believe in vaccines, as if because one vaccine may have worked and yet we don't have proof because many things have never done the clinical trials and the blind studies and stuff like that. But because maybe one did and we're just told to believe, now therefore all vaccines are supposed to work, and everybody's like, believe in the science, or and don't you like how they
or you're racist.
Anti-vaxxers.
You're racist.
Anti-vaxxer. It's like, well, maybe I'm not anti-vaxxer, but I definitely want to know what's in it, the proof behind it. So right now it sounds like it's just a guinea pig trial, and it sounds like there's a good chance that a lot of these doctors and nurses could be tried under the Nuremberg trials, right? That you guys, I think you're aware.
mRNA vaccines were illegal.
Illegal?
Were illegal until last year.
Okay.
mRNA vaccines. And if anyone ever listened to science, they would know that science recommended a 10 to 15-year trial on any drug. Like, to be approved by the FDA, it has to be tested for that long.
Yeah.
So
let's just rush them through.
If you actually believe in science, then you would go back to our previous regulations that was supposed to protect us, and you would say, oh no, this is coming out way too fast. But see, because everyone got their rights taken away, they want a solution as fast as possible. Like, they're willing to do harm.
They're starving us out so everyone bends.
Yeah.
And gives up.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like, I've read comments online of people that said, oh, I just want to get back to normal.
Back to normal. Give me the shot so I can get back traveling.
Yeah. People have said, oh, I know there might be long-term effects, but I'm willing to take it so I don't get COVID-19. And meanwhile, there hasn't even been very good proof, in my opinion, that COVID-19 even exists.
Right.
So you're willing to knowingly harm yourself in the future, or maybe your future children or whatever.
Who knows?
And yet just to not get a pandemic disease that hasn't even killed that many people. If you look at the fentanyl overdoses in BC, it's disgusting.
It's higher than the world.
Yeah, the most overdose deaths
in the world
right
now.
In British Columbia, Canada. So, and everyone's focused on this COVID-19. People have been dying for 3 years in astronomical numbers.
Yeah, the depression, the suicides. So yeah, I started doing a survey last year, like how many people actually knew people that you had to know, only one separation, like you had to know somebody that died. And suicides became more popular than anybody that actually knew somebody. So people say, oh, I know somebody, but it wasn't somebody they knew. They'd be like, I heard of somebody. It's like, oh, really? So you heard about them dying, but it wasn't a close friend of yours. So I got close to 100 people. And then I started hearing more and more about people talking about they never knew anybody. But I mean, just a few weeks ago, I ran into somebody and we started chatting, and I said, well, they've never even isolated the virus. And so, well, my brother died, it was terrible. And it's like, okay, yeah, so he might have died, but it's like, well, what's happened to the flu? Like, where did it go?
And he may have died of anything. They're literally just putting COVID on a ton of deaths that aren't even proven to be COVID, nor were the people even testing positive, because the test is arguable.
Right, because I think his name is Terry Mullins or something like that, who created the test. He actually said this isn't meant to actually be a coronavirus test. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, he passed away last year of pneumonia. Mm-hmm. It could be a suspicious thing. But I mean, I have a video of him talking about how Dr. Fauci is happy to go on TV and lie to the people. Mm-hmm. Because this is the guy that actually created the PCR test. Mm-hmm. And he's basically saying it's not meant to detect whether you have COVID. And then people have done the research to say, okay, well, the cycles in which they're doing these tests are over 30 and it's supposed to be under 30. So there's a lot of false positives and stuff like that. Yeah. And then, so what do you say about, I guess, some of these doctors in the hospitals, weren't they getting paid? You've heard about that, right? Paid to put it on the death certificate. And it didn't matter.
Sure. Absolutely. The more COVID deaths, the more money they get. And because we're then this is important if you're not from Canada, this is where the socialized healthcare system becomes very scary, because they're so strapped for resources in our hospitals and in our healthcare system that they'll literally do anything to get the money they need to take care of the amount of patients that come in regularly. Right. Like, I know people who work in healthcare, they're very, very strapped for resources. And that's because the government's obviously doing it on purpose. Like, we could obviously, if we needed the money and the resources for healthcare, why wouldn't health be the most important thing in this country? We could allocate those funds as needed. Instead, you make people do nasty things to get the resources and apply for certain grants and all of this. And so these hospital administrators are completely in on it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I've heard a lot of people, so the news will come on and say, well, it's really terrible in Saskatchewan, and somebody will go to the hospital and be like, there's nobody here, and
empty.
And
all the hospitals.
So many.
Right. In LA, people are going around, they said, no, there's thousands of, and it's just going crazy. And a guy goes from hospital to hospital and he starts talking to ambulance drivers, like, no, it's pretty mellow. I heard about it in Mexico City. The doctor in Edmonton who came out and said that, they prepared us the first time, and then they said, oh, a second wave is coming and get ready for this. And meanwhile, they just sit around and do nothing. And then you've seen the nurses dancing.
Yeah, the videos of nurses dancing on shift, masks on, dancing through the hallways. Yeah.
Meanwhile, pre-COVID-19, nurses were too busy and overworked. You know what I mean?
But they had enough time to choreograph a whole dance through their hospital. It wasn't that crazy. And that's not enough to wake people up. Is this stuff just not being seen on mainstream media?
People are afraid to be shamed. I just spoke to two people today that seemed very awake. They seemed very aware. They didn't want us to have masks on or anything like that. They were awesome. But they said in public, they put it on. They say people
because they don't want to get them.
They don't want people.
They don't want to argue. They don't want to fight with people.
It's crazy.
And I think this is one reason why I want to start talking with you guys more and some other people, so that we can learn ways, so that, because in the past, I get worked up. I've never been a big fan of authority and people telling me what to do, because I'm not telling you what to do and how to live your life, right? So
Yeah, of course.
I'm not telling you not to smoke and put, um, pressure on our health system. I'm not telling you to stop eating your greasy hamburger and fries and getting fat and stuff.
Yeah.
Take care of yourself. And it's like, whatever happened to, say, your immune system? Like, did that just go away? We don't want to teach our kids about the immune system. Eat well, eat healthy, because your food is your medicine. That's what I believe. And so try to eat healthy. And so yeah, it's incredible.
And anyone who gives a shit about their immune system isn't going to want to breathe through a dirty mask 24/7. Like, that's just stupid. Like,
Right. That's what I was
I
gonna
don't
say,
care
is
what
like, how, so sorry, go on.
I don't care what science is proving that it does something. There's not, like, that is just so filthy and dirty. Don't even.
Disgusting. And they never told you the proper way to wear it. And if it was so toxic, wouldn't there need to be these bins, these special places to put them?
They're all
Oh,
over. The
obviously.
masks all over the roads, on the beaches.
This is what I want to make a video and take pictures and videotape it every time. And okay, here's the new normal. This is what you're gonna see. We just
Right.
got rid of plastic bags, straws, and now we're like just seeing masks everywhere. I've seen
Yeah.
them on the
And
beach.
it's a scientific fact that our mouths are literally the most dirty part of our bodies. So,
Speak for yourself.
well, mine anyway.
So yeah, what I was gonna say is that we need to learn to be able to stand in our power, hold our truth, and be able to speak to these people that want to come after us. Because it's happened to me before. I'm sitting in the parking lot online, and somebody knocks on the door and says, "Hey, next time you go into the restaurant where my wife is working, can you please wear a mask?" And I said, "No, I'm exempt." And the thing is the seat that I went to sit in was literally 2 steps from the front door. And once I sit down, I'd be able to take it off, and then he's going to be
Nope.
fine. He came out of his way to tell me to not do it, and I'm putting his father's life at risk or something like that. I say, well,
Oh yes.
you're not afraid.
Oh yes. We're the serial killers now.
Yeah.
Grandparents.
Killing people.
So
Yeah.
how do we
Yes.
stay compassionate for these people? We know that they're living in fear and they've been brainwashed, but how do we handle ourselves so that we can make them question themselves and say, wow, I didn't get a rise out of these people. My friend was telling me that one way is to say, oh, just like, yeah, you poor little thing, like you're still in that lower vibration. You haven't quite understood how to be yourself and breathe that fresh air, but you'll get there one day, kind of, and maybe that's one way. But I don't shop in our little town because, one, the grocery store here doesn't carry the good food that I have or that I like, organic kind of stuff. And then the other little one where I can get that kind of stuff, she's so afraid, and she says, you need to wear a mask. I could pre-order the stuff, but I go across the island, and 90% of the people in there will wear a mask. But when they come up to me and say, hey, do you have a mask? I say, no, I'm exempt. They just say, okay, that's great. And then I've had elderly couples come up and say, well, how are you getting by without wearing a mask, And I said, well, I just say I'm exempt and stuff. And they'll be thanking me for that I've inspired them.
Yeah, that's great.
And it's like, finally, I feel like I'm actually doing something by standing in my power, because so many times it's like, well, what can we do? I want to be able to share where we get our information and why it's just ridiculous that Fauci's flip-flop back and forth on the mask. There is no scientific proof. I listen to people like Del Bigtree and the High Wire stuff, and he's done amazing things on vaccines and the whole mask and everything like that. But how are we going to, as individuals, help people realize that they're not going to get us all pissed off? They can't tell us what to do.
It's an individual approach.
We have to just slowly keep trying to explain to people.
Well, that's what the thing with us is. People find us abrasive sometimes. I don't know why. Maybe it's the metal or something, the heavy metal. But what I find is the more people get to know us and they realize we're not like scary people, or we're not super extremely like hard to connect with.
Yeah.
Once they start connecting with us on a personal level, then they start kind of easing into our views more.
Yeah.
And I think if you have the time with somebody to find that personal connection, I feel like a lot of that antagonistic energy goes away despite the different views.
Yeah. I remember you telling me a lot of times you would, especially on your moon time, when you would get worked up, instead of taking it on Steve, you'd get online and start trolling these ignorant people. on their stuff, and that was a way for you to release a lot of that information. You've gotten a lot of backlash on that, and death threats, and like you
Oh,
should.
yeah.
Oh yeah, all the time.
I get it all the time. I'm okay with it because it's online, and I go on there knowing what I'm gonna get back. But he gets a little protective of me. So.
I personally don't. I no longer, I got rid of Facebook almost a year ago. I can't stand what was being said on there and how they tried
Absolutely.
to virtual
Yeah.
signal and stuff like
Absolutely, the horrible communist platforms, all of them.
Yeah.
Twitter,
You even got rid
Facebook,
of Twitter, and you had a really
10,000 followers.
Twitter, yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I got kicked off of Twitter
Yeah.
on the big purge. And that should be another sign, right? So you've got the censorship. Everybody knows the censorship is happening, but people don't want to wake up and see that, hey, this is, you're becoming a communist state. So, the doctors that came out and said, hey, hydroxychloroquine works against, 100% recovery rate. This stuff has been on the market for 50, 60 years or something like that. Fauci wrote something in 2005 on how hydroxychloroquine works for all sorts of stuff. And then all of a sudden, last year, no, don't talk about it. And, but so these people come out, the doctors, in the hundreds of thousands around the world, but it gets censored. So, here we are, we're up against the censorship. So we sound like the crazy fools that have drank in the Kool-Aid, because we're like, no, this isn't that bad. There are cures, remedies, and stuff. So.
My favorite is there's a meme online that has a nice little family, like at Christmas time, everyone's posing, and it says conspiracy theorists, and then underneath is all those people in the airports when COVID first happened with bottles over their head and stuff, and they're like normal people.
Yeah, normies.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. Hey, so what is your hope for the future? What do you see happening? Yesterday, Trump was just acquitted for his being impeached for the second time. Do you feel like that's a step in the right direction? Do you feel like it's going to get even worse, or do you think that something good is coming along? How do you guys feel right now?
Well, that's a good thing. Obviously, it's good.
Yeah.
It's a silly witch hunt in the first place. It's all fabricated, all garbage, all of it. I don't believe a word that the Democrats or liberals say, the media. We know. We saw the 75 million people who voted for him.
Yeah.
We know.
So as far as Canada's concerned, though, I believe it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Canada's different than the States.
We don't have that little freedom bug that everyone has in the States.
We don't have a Second Amendment. We don't have the amendments like you guys. So I don't know.
I think in Canada, people need to start feeling a little bit more of the burn. And I think, if they keep these people, more and more people are, even though they're not acting, more and more people are, having the same ideas as us, like this is, and questioning it because it's not really making sense.
Yeah.
But here I think we're going to be I think if something great happens in America, Canada will also follow. That's the one good thing about this country. We always kind of mimic what's going on there. But there's a huge anti-American sentiment in Canada, and that really scares me because
but that's media driven, right?
It's media driven, and in our schools,
schools, education.
Yeah. So our education system is messed up, and they're teaching a lot.
For instance, clients and other people that we talk to, they automatically, what about this Trump? What about this Trump? This Donald Trump being racist and blah, blah, blah. And I immediately ask them, wait. You live in Canada, right? And well, yeah. Well, what about Trudeau? Why don't you look in your own backyard and figure out what's going on in your country first before you worry about what's going on with the States?
Yeah.
People, really? Oh.
Isn't it crazy how they push a lot of this racism? We had a black president. You've got Oprah Winfrey, one of the most wealthy. You've got basketball players, the best golfer in the world, Tiger.
Idols. They're idols.
And people loved Kobe Bryant. And you saw after his death, the fans that came out, like it's obviously driven. And I've just recently come across Thomas Sowell, and he really describes a lot of this narrative to make us feel like we should be guilty and that we've got all these white privileges. Well, I personally would like to turn in my white privilege card because I think it's broken.
Yeah, mine's never worked.
Yeah, my family grew up in the Rust Belt, working class. All the generations you can go back have been working class. There's no family money. There's no properties in my family. There's nothing. It's just work, die, work, die. So where's the freaking privilege in that?
Really, you could say you're slaves
to
the government.
Oh,
Wow. Imagine that.
Wow.
Yeah.
White privilege.
So you're talking about the media, which I found too, is like when I was on Twitter and I started actually, there is a good percentage, it's rather small, of people that do like Trumps. There are people like, we want Trump for Canada too, but I think that the majority of people are still watching the mainstream media. And I noticed, because I don't watch TV, but on Twitter you can see what, global television and the news and everything, that they're talking about what's going on in the States and stuff. And it's like, well, wait a minute, what about all these things that Trudeau should be tried for? And he a lot of these things, the We scandal, the LNC Lavalin,
SNC Lavalin,
there you go,
blackface, there's so many. The list. What about his rape charges?
Yeah, there you go. So you have a lot of this, but it's like, let's not talk about our own prime minister. Let's focus on this orange man, bad guy going on in the States. But what I like about you guys, that you're both of you guys, well educated on both governments and the countries and stuff. And so
our country frowns upon the well-educated. You don't want to have too much brains in our country. If you notice, okay, in the States, 75 million people voted for Trump. That's amazing. How many people vote in our country? Like, we have 38 million people in our country, and the vote count is so low. I mean, people don't even participate in politics here.
Yeah. And so it's interesting, because I stopped voting, because it's like, I'm just going to vote for myself and start voting with my dollar. And I think there should be 70 billion presidents, or, be the leader of your own world and take care of yourself so that you can help other people. But I mean, with somebody that's actually standing with the people and for the liberties, and you can see what's going on. I mean, I think that right now you can see a lot of people, especially in the States, that are getting involved in politics at a very young age too, which I think is important. But now for Canada, do you feel that you even get a voice being on the West Coast? Or
not in the West? The vote is completely decided in the East. Ontario and Quebec. Our votes don't even matter in the West.
Well, by the time our votes are counted in the Pacific time zone, it's already decided, because the seats, right, it goes on population, and the most populated are Quebec and Ontario, because those were like the original Canadas, and it's very rugged terrain out here, so that's why the population is just slowly growing out west. And it is a very biased system. It only really caters to Ontario and Quebec. And at one point, that kind of worked for our country, because all of the economy was in Ontario and Quebec. But since we don't have industry in our country anymore, and they shut down all the factories, and there's no more automotive industry, no more steel, Ontario's kind of like, they don't have any of that industry, so they're not carrying the dollar for the entire country anymore, right? Ontario and Quebec. So it makes no sense why they would have more of a say, when for the longest time Alberta was the big money maker. It's like we were moving out west again.
They destroyed. Trudeau wants to completely destroy that. It's destroyed that province.
And so is BC predominantly liberal?
And NDP. Well, NDP, which is real scary. They're close, but they're bad. Look at the leader of the NDP party here. He's not even welcome in India, because he's a known terrorist and a known terrorist supporter. So that should be a scary thing for Canadians.
But people don't know that, do they?
No, they don't. And they want to vote for NDP. Give that a think.
What about our current defense minister, Harjit Sajjan? He's not welcome in India.
He's not welcome in India either.
And so when our prime minister tried to take him to India, the prime minister of India didn't even meet with Justin Trudeau. That big trip he went on, where he made that big scene, he tried to bring Harjit Sajjan, who's not welcome there. And he also brought a known criminal on his own plane.
A terrorist,
and then claimed he didn't know after.
Trudeau surrounds himself with terrorists.
He just,
and pedophiles, I heard.
And pedophiles. He paid a terrorist, killed knowingly known
Omar Cotter
in the States. That poor widow in the States has to watch Trudeau pay this terrorist that blew him up, making landmines, $10.5 million. Now that poor lady.
I'll give you
how sickening is that?
A quick summary. Omar Cotter was born in Saskatchewan, Canada. His parents were born in Iraq. During the Afghanistan war after 9/11, his father and he took his 2 sons over to Iraq to fight with the rebels there. And Omar Cotter got caught after he blew up a U.S. platoon and killed 1 U.S. soldier. And he was a medic. He killed the medic, which is against the rules of war anyways.
Geneva.
And so he was being held in Guantanamo for quite a while, and he was going to be tried. And then our country negotiated with the States under Stephen Harper to have him come back to Canada, and he would serve time in jail here. As soon as he came back to Canada, the lawyers got him out of jail.
Wow.
Then he sued the Canadian government for allowing Guantanamo to question him,
torture him.
So he sued the Canadian government, and instead of the Canadian government fighting it in court, they settled on $10.5 million. Last year, he got his passport reinstated because now he can go back to the Middle East.
Wow.
And that's all under Trudeau.
This is insane. I never.
Good job. Good job, Trudeau.
Look
but
it up.
He's a good prime minister, though, right?
Oh, he's doing a good job. We hear people here talk like that. Oh, he's doing a good
job. But that's because they're not paying attention, are they? What are these guys doing? What are they're being brainwashed on Netflix instead, right?
Netflix and TV.
God forbid you look into it.
Because you know what? It's a stupid slave race. We're stuck. You know, you got to go to work to pay the bills, or else you're going to lose everything. So when you come home from work, the job you hate, you just watch TV and drink and go to bed, because tomorrow you got to do the same thing. And no one even knows what life is.
Yeah, it's sad.
It's sad. It's sad.
Well, that's crazy. Yeah. So thanks for enlightening me on that, because I haven't really followed too much of what's going on with the Canadian government with that type of history. But I mean, that's something I think is very important. And so it's great to have you on and enlighten people on that as well. And they can look all this up in various ways, right? But you can't just find it in the Globe and Mail or anything.
Again, Omar Cotter is a very publicized thing that happened, because obviously it's huge. It's huge. And in fact, as soon as he got the settlement, the wife of the American soldier who was killed immediately sued Omar Cotter, and Canada is protecting him and blocking the lawsuit from the States. And you know, he invested his money. He bought a strip mall in Saskatchewan. Like, this guy's gonna be a millionaire forever.
Yeah.
Forever.
Yeah.
And he's off of house arrest. He got his passport back. So they're gonna let him leave the country again.
Yeah. Meanwhile, if you tell a border officer that you have smoked marijuana, you're not even allowed to be
correct. Can't cross the border.
Ross Rebliati, who won the first snowboard gold medal, he's still, I think, at this. It would be great to talk to him now. I met him a long time ago, and we surfed together and stuff. And it'd be interesting because I think he's got his own business now, a marijuana business. But he no longer was able to go down there, so it'd be interesting to see if now he can. But I mean, he never hurt anybody, he didn't blow up anybody, you know. But you can't go down to the States because of this kind of stuff. It's just, where's the justice, eh?
Oh, the justice system needs an overhaul. The political system needs an overhaul. People aren't focused on freedom anymore.
Guilty until proven innocent.
Yeah, everyone just wants you to pay and suffer. Like, even your neighbors want you to pay. Like, it's based on like this really negative energy that I don't think we were put on this earth to be obsessed with. All these negative energies and all these rules that are taking away our freedoms. Like, there's some basic rules to live by. We should all live by them. And being mean to each other and ratting each other out for no mask or all this stuff, that's not.
Look what they've created now with this COVID and masks. Everyone's turned on each other.
Well, have we seen that before, right?
Yeah, right.
No shit. Yeah.
Many times, if people check their history.
Yeah,
that's true. And in many different forms.
Yeah.
Yeah. all the hypocrisies of the left, hey?
I know.
Well, we could have so many shows, and we might be running down on time right now, and we could just keep this discussion going for a long time. There's so many things that I can learn from you, and that we should share with other people. So I appreciate.
We learned lots from you as well, Doug.
Good.
May I just say, one of the things that when we first met you, we thought was so admirable was the fact that you kind of separated from the whole society
rat
thing,
race, the society rat race.
Exactly, living on the boat, like following your dreams. If your dream at the time, you don't have to stick with one dream, but you're doing what you're doing, and you're separated from what's keeping everybody in shackles, basically.
Yeah. Well, thanks.
What about the nice foraging, the clams and the oysters?
Amazing.
Is so awesome when you bring us that. We love that.
And teaching us how to do it ourselves. That's so great. Especially for me, coming from a family that all we did for generations is work and survive and then die. We didn't do a lot of foraging or anything. It was just kind of like the money, go to the grocery store, eat, go to bed. That's the whole cycle.
Yeah.
It wasn't this beautiful thing where that's what we're put on this earth to do, to have connection with nature. And
well, it's really refreshing to have you two around as well, because you've seen how dismal it is. You can't have these conversations with hardly anybody. I have met a few more, and they're kind of coming out of the woodwork here and there, but because of everybody's on house arrest, you don't really get a chance, and you can't have these conversations. And I don't want to go to the pub and drink and have, well, you can't really, but I'm starting to find a few more, but it is refreshing. We can sit out there under the stars and the fire and have those conversations with our friends. There's so many things I wanted to talk to you and ask you questions about, especially when we're sitting out on the fire and asking our friends, when we met and we hadn't had conversations before, and we started talking about Obama, and I threw that one out there. I'm like, well, what about Michelle? And what did you guys say?
Michael?
Oh, Michael and Barry?
Yeah. And they're like, what are you talking about? And it's like, sweet. So we're on the same page. It was awesome to see that you guys had been doing the same type of research and have been awake to this stuff and not just believing this mainstream narrative. And red pilling our friends was kind of fun, even though it's been pretty difficult at times.
Well, I don't think they're our friends anymore.
Would they say, we'll go back on the boat with you, but you can't talk about these things? Like, well,
you're
gonna dictate what we say now, hey? I still love them. I love everybody, but I don't have time for these people, that are just gonna be like, oh, my feelings, you're hurting my idolization of this person and stuff like that. It's like, you know what? We're gonna continue to speak the truth. We're gonna, we're not gonna ask permission to do anything, and
right.
And I am grateful to live in a place, this abundant nature of fresh air, fresh water. We can harvest. It's been a pleasure to share that stuff with you. And that's what we're here for. I'm not going to be afraid to die, because what's the point of living, if you're just going to spend all your time, so.
Everyone lives in fear. We don't need to.
No. So it's been exciting. We've had a lot of great conversations. And so I hope we can continue doing this, because again, there's lots of more questions and more that we can learn and educate. And it's a great way for our friends to hear the conversations. They say, well, what can we do? It's like, have these conversations at the dinner table, talk to your neighbors and stuff like that. Well, if you're not allowed to do that, well, I think this is a great platform. So I really appreciate this. It's something I've been wanting to do for a long time. And we're going to continue doing this. So
sounds good.
Yeah, we're down.
Yeah, we'll talk more about your music. I like your Frank Zappa shirt. I liked watching that documentary and his music from the 70s with you guys the other night. So we'll also, how can people find your music?
We're on all major platforms.
Spotify,
Apple, YouTube.
Yeah, Google Play. Yeah.
Okay, again, so that's Attack the Fire.
Yeah. And the album's called Incendiary.
And you just have one album? Are you guys working on anything else?
The second album's written. Just looking for a studio here.
Right on. Well, I say let's stick with our plan to shoot a video. I know we have a lot of creative ideas and stuff, and it'd be awesome to shoot that with you guys. We could just get some footage of you guys jamming, and we'll post that on our channels as well.
Sure, we have a video
on YouTube.
On YouTube,
Jeffrey.
a lyric video. You guys can
Okay.
check it out. It's called
Yep.
Jeffrey by Attack the Fire.
Okay.
And
It's on YouTube.
it's
yeah.
on YouTube. Mhm.
Right on.
Yep.
Well, sounds good. Thank you guys very much again. Have a beautiful Valentine's Day.
Thank you.
And we look forward to speaking with you guys again.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Anytime. Thanks,
Take
guys.
care.
Thanks for listening, guys. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.